4 small Asian countries have the fastest growing economies on Earth. We wear the clothes they make. We drive the cars and watch the TVs they manufacture. And we have a name for them. We call these countries the mini-dragons. They're driven by the values of Confucius, values like hard work and a hunger for education. They're fueled by a young, energetic population. And they've created an economic miracle. Do they threaten our prosperity and our jobs? Do we need to master their formula for success? Now, meet a mini-dragon going through tense changes, Taiwan. It has accumulated amazing wealth, but it's still struggling with democracy. South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan. Centuries of tradition and culture. Devastated in war. Now, the new economic powers of Asia. South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan. These are the mini-dragons.
To many people, Taiwan is the other China. This island, about half the size of South Carolina, looks tiny alongside the mainland. It may be tiny in size, but it exports more goods than the entire People's Republic of China. And the average person in Taiwan earns 27 times more than the average mainlander. Taiwan is truly the capitalist challenge to the communist giant. But economic success has its own price for the people of Taiwan, as you will see.
Each Chinese New Year, people pray for the future and remember the past. On Taiwan, a small island 90 miles off the coast of mainland China, this New Year seems rich with promise. While the future looks bright, there are still signs of a darker past. 40 years of dictatorship and martial law that have only recently given way to a growing democracy. For much of this time, Taiwan was an island of 2 very separate societies, divided not by race or religion, but by birthplace. Here, native Taiwanese have lived for generations. Here, too, live former Chinese mainlanders who fled to Taiwan with Chiang Kai-shek after his defeat by the communists in 1949. Obsessed with winning back China, the mainlanders, Chiang's Kuomintang, took control of Taiwan's government, leaving commerce to the willing hands of the native Taiwanese. In a single generation, Taiwan has amassed great wealth. It is among the world's top exporting nations. On this island of entrepreneurs, there is no unemployment. The gap between rich and poor is smaller than anywhere in the world. But the island's success threatens its future, for many Taiwanese are tired and angry, tired of working so hard, and angry at a government that ruled with an iron glove for 40 years. With martial law finally lifted 4 years ago, the pace of democratic reform has quickened, but new freedom has fueled new demands. On Taiwan, the future seems filled with questions. This morning, Frank Yu's thoughts are on the future of his factory. In a place where 1 in 14 owns a business, Frank sees his labor costs rising and his labor pool shrinking. Frank makes tennis rackets for Japanese and American companies. In this family business, his wife keeps the books. So far, business is good. Here, 140 people work day and night producing tennis rackets for Prince, Yamaha, and Kawasaki. Frank has developed a unique carbon fiber process to fashion rackets of very high quality. But 45% of his direct costs are labor, and in Taiwan, cheap labor is a thing of the past. He simply cannot find and keep enough good workers. Yet, if he's to stay competitive, he must expand capacity. Like other manufacturers, Frank's answer may lie in mainland China, where labor's still cheap. Technically, the Kuomintang government, the KMT, opposes direct investment in the mainland. But official attitudes are changing. So Frank must weigh the business risks while struggling to keep the workers he has. Because the KMT controls the banks, personal connections, or guanqi, help fuel Taiwan's entrepreneurs, creating the financial capital they need. Frank's network of friends and alliances often leads to new business opportunities.
All of us could be involved in managing the new company.
I've got 3 questions. What do you expect from this new partnership? Who is really going to oversee the business? And how much profit am I going to make?
A former employee recently asked Frank to join him in a new business venture, to take advantage of the booming economy and start a cement business. Frank and his 2 partners are here to strike a deal.
I hope our new company generates a steady profit stream.
Well, before I start a new business, the main thing is just to be sure what the return on investment would be. A 50% return sounds great. You may be an offer I can't refuse.
Although cement has little to do with tennis rackets, Frank will put up the money. Personal connections, guanqi, is the deciding factor. They celebrate the new partnership with songs and drink, or as it's called, karaoke. Frank and his extended family live in a large family compound in Taichung, Taiwan's 3rd largest city. When Frank was just a child, his father lost his business. He died soon after, and his family was left with nothing. Frank's mother did what she could to raise 10 children. Only Frank was able to go to college. Now the most successful member of his family, Frank takes care of his brothers and sisters. For Frank, like many Taiwanese, wealth created a sanctuary in a world that for too long lacked personal freedom. In contrast to the prosperous West Coast, Taiwan's East Coast was largely untouched by development. Tsai Chung-po came here with a vision to tame the forest and manufacture silicone for Taiwan's booming steel industry. He constructed roads, dug wells, and even built his own hydroelectric plant to power his factory. Back then, people laughed at him, for there were already 30 such factories in private hands. But the high cost of state-owned electricity soon drove them out of business. Now, only Mr. Tsai's factory remains. Each week, Mr. Tsai returns to watch over his factory. The people here see him as a savior, for he's given them jobs, provided electricity, and brought development to the area. Taiwan's economic success is due primarily to 700,000 or more small and medium-sized businesses. Mr. Tsai himself owns 3 different companies. Called Mr. Bridge because of all the structures he's built, he's speaking tonight at Taipei's Rotary Club. In this room sit some of Taiwan's most successful businessmen. Only one representative from each industry can become a member of this elite group, and they've just elected Mr. Tsai chairman. During the decades when native Taiwanese were denied access to political power, economic wealth and success provided its own security. Like so many of his countrymen, Mr. Tsai has bitter personal memories of the early days of KMT control. When Mr. Tsai was a young man, the Japanese ruled Taiwan. When the Japanese were forced out after World War II, Mao Zedong was battling Chiang Kai-shek for control of China. In 1949, on the eve of communist victory, Chiang Kai-shek fled to Taiwan with 600,000 KMT soldiers and 2 million mainlanders. In the Cold War years that followed, Taiwan grew in strategic importance, the United States supplying almost $5 billion in military aid to keep the KMT in power and help stop communist aggression. To fortify their island stronghold, the KMT declared martial law, intensifying hostility between the native Taiwanese and mainlanders, hostility that began years before Chiang Kai-shek ever set foot on the island. On February 28, 1947, what is now called the 228 incident, Taiwan's KMT governor brutally suppressed a popular uprising, killing 10,000 native Taiwanese. At this time, Mr. Tsai was arrested and brought to the KMT prison known as Green Island.
The Kuomintang government treated the Taiwanese very cruelly. At the time of the 228 incident, I was a student leader at Taiwan University. We told the government to treat us the same as the mainlanders. We wanted human rights and democracy for the Taiwanese. But the Kuomintang assassinated our leaders and planned to kill all of Taiwan's elite.
During the 228 incident, Mr. Tsai led Taiwanese forces fighting the KMT. He was imprisoned along with thousands of other intellectuals. Though sentenced to death twice, Mr. Tsai somehow managed to survive, spending the next 12 years in prison.
When I was on Green Island, I vowed, if I ever left this prison alive, I would fight injustice and look after the families of those who died here.
By Chinese tradition, the elderly are cared for by their families. There's little tradition of public welfare in any Chinese society. So, in spite of the island's affluence, a welfare system is still not fully established. The elderly KMT soldiers who left their relatives on the mainland need the most help. Each month, Mr. Tsai donates money here.
They are poor people. They can't even survive without places like this. The government should treat them fairly and look after them. After all, they believed and followed the Kuomintang to Taiwan in the first place.
Some still hold on to the politics of the past, to the dream of defeating the communists and returning victorious to the mainland. But others see Taiwan's future lying in a different direction and become impatient with the regime still dominated by elderly mainlanders. Frank dreams of expanding his business. He may soon have the chance. He's been developing a new carbon fiber racket which could bring more business and more prestige. This afternoon, Frank will present the new model to his Japanese client. There's been talk that once the prototype is accepted, the Japanese will place a very large order. This could be the chance Frank has been waiting for.
I'd like to show you another color, just for your reference. How about this?
Now we have a new trend. We say it's postmodern. That means very classical, but something different. Sometimes it's longer, wider, or it looks strange.
English is often the international language of business.
Classical.
This model will be one of the world's most expensive and exclusive carbon fiber rackets.
This kind of things will be that will not happen, right, for the mass productions. Okay. Then let me use this racket to explain that those 20 samples I received, this joint part was not done very nicely. Make it very, consistent.
Yes.
The materials problem.
It's the material.
But what I can tell is this: for like Australian market, European market, it's okay. American market, maybe, but not Japanese market.
Okay. Japan always the number one.
Yeah, and also especially for the Japanese market, this transparency of this part is important.
Transparency.
Transparent, right?
I see.
Otherwise, it's going to be a big problem.
My parents' generation never lost their feeling for the homeland. They were always talking about the wide open spaces, about how beautiful everything was over there, and about how one day they would return to the mainland. My parents never regarded Taiwan as their home. Even when I was a child, I felt I had no roots here. My generation is like grass without roots. And now, I'm not sure where I belong.
Until recently, Hui Meng, a second-generation mainlander, was Taiwan's #1 actress.
I was never satisfied being an actress. I felt I was just a tool for whatever the director wanted to express. And gradually, I came to realize that I must think for myself, express my own ideas, not someone else's. When I was young, mainlanders just spent their time gambling at mahjong. They didn't care about Taiwan at all. You could say I grew up next to a mahjong table. My mother emotionally was very weak, and my father was quite ill for his last 10 years. A member of parliament, he represented Nanjing, the capital of our country, a place no Kuomintang official has been able to see for 40 years. Although my father became too ill to participate in politics, he still kept his position. Now, I have awakened to the inequities of our political situation. Now I have my own clear views.
In exile on Taiwan, the KMT decreed that all its legislators would remain in office until a victory over the communists allowed for new elections. In effect, like Hu Yinmong's father, the legislators became parliamentarians for life, able to forestall political change on Taiwan for 4 decades. Hu Yinmong's father died a year ago, and now she's finding her own voice. She came here today to meet Mr. Liang, an old family friend. A powerful member of parliament, Mr. Liang was very close to her father, and since his death, keeps watch over Hu Yinmong and her family. Here the treasures of ancient China await the KMT's victorious return to rule the mainland. But Hu Yinmong and her generation know their future lies on Taiwan, so Hu Yin will work to make her island home a better place.
Are there any treasures left in the mainland?
Well, there are some, but you can't compare them with these. My friend went over there and told me our treasures are far better. Time goes so fast. How long has it been since your father died?
Well, almost a year now.
Oh, are you planning to have a memorial service?
I don't believe in such things.
But you need to honor his memory.
I disagree. A memorial service is just for show. It doesn't mean much to me.
The old order is changing, and Chiang Kai-shek's vision has dulled. Now Taiwan's people are ready to confront their past. In 1990, City of Sadness, a film portraying the events surrounding the 228 incident, was released and received international acclaim. For Frank Yu, this movie recalls painful memories. After the 228 incident, the Taiwanese were increasingly afraid to speak out. But now, Taiwan's silent past is out in the open. Throughout Taiwan, City of Sadness has become a requiem for those who died and could never be publicly acknowledged.
Historically, the Taiwanese have never controlled their own fate. They have always been controlled by foreign forces. My father was like many other Taiwanese who worked hard running their business, but lost everything when the KMT took power. My father died in despair.
With growing economic success, demands for democratization proved impossible to ignore. In 1986, the Democratic People's Party, the DPP, was formed. The next year, martial law was lifted, and the pace of reform accelerated. Lin Shui, university professor and environmentalist, is one of the DPP's candidates for the national parliament. With 18 million Taiwanese and only 2 million mainlanders, the DPP calls for a Taiwan of, by, and for the Taiwanese. The KMT is confident. Still, they're making sure they get every possible vote. In this campaign for parliament, only 1/3 of the seats are up for election. 2/3 will still be held by the elderly lifetime parliamentarians. But Taiwan's government is changing. The president is a native Taiwanese, as are some KMT members of parliament. The old divisions are beginning to disappear. Huin Meng, second-generation mainlander, has decided to speak out.
Because of our economic success, people don't have to worry about food, clothing, and shelter. Materially, life is comfortable. We can enjoy our prosperity. But this wealth hasn't brought us any security. On the contrary, these riches have brought disorder to our society. The basic needs of our life, water, air, and food, are all polluted. Everything we sense and feel is polluted. If the objective of acquiring wealth is to improve our standard of living, we haven't achieved our objective at all. I do not think we have been truly successful. We've made too many mistakes. Something must be done.
这个是一个非常严重的问题。好，谢谢。我们再给陈兆兰一个加油，陈兆兰，陈兆兰，陈兆兰。
During this campaign, the KMT will massively outspend its new rival. To win votes, wealthy KMT supporters throw huge banquets. Often people go to a new feast night after night, receiving free food and drink. Many Taiwanese entrepreneurs sympathize with the DPP and provide its financial backing. But in spite of democratization, they often donate money in secret, fearing the KMT may strike back at their businesses.
When we disagree with lifetime parliamentarians, they never admit they are at fault. They still believe they are the legitimate representatives for millions of Chinese on the vast mainland. They have created a very temporary way of thinking. For them, the government of Taiwan is only temporary. Their stay here only temporary. This way of thinking has caused all the problems we have in Taiwan today. They only think about their salary, about money. Why is making a profit the major goal instead of pursuing what's good for our country?
Frank Yu has come here tonight because these issues touch him deeply as well.
How can we make Taiwan a better place to live? How can we create a bright future? I call out to all of you. If you really love this country, then please change your lifestyle. Because real change must first come from within.
Frank is returning to his birthplace, Tainan, 1 hour south of his factory and home. The morning is filled with questions. Will he be able to satisfy his Japanese client? Will labor shortages sink his business? And what will happen in this volatile political climate? Searching for answers, he is returning to his roots.
When I was a child, almost everyone in my village worked in the sugarcane industry. My father owned a factory as a subcontractor to the Japanese. But after the war, when the KMT took over, they forced him to close his factory and they took all his land. When he died, we were left with nothing. It fell to my eldest brother and sister to support the family. Thanks to them, I was able to go to college. There's nothing left where my father's factory used to be. But seeing this emptiness, I feel encouraged to work hard to rebuild what's been destroyed. Because I started out with nothing anyway, I no longer need to feel afraid. There must be a way to reach a new world.
These men are wealthy entrepreneurs, but they share more than just business success. Educated under Japanese rule, all were prisoners on Green Island. Even now, some find it painful to speak of those terrible years.
If they thought someone was of the elite, he'd be dead in no time.
The government didn't care if they rounded up 100 innocent people, as long as just one was guilty.
I joined a reading circle during high school. After graduation, former members of the group were interned one after the other. I still don't know what crime I had committed.
Even in the dead of winter, we just wore underwear. Prisoners had to alternate sleeping and standing. In that condition, even pigs would die.
After living through Green Island, Nothing else was as difficult as that experience in my life.
I agree. Life in prison was terrible, but it gave us the strength and the will to succeed.
By election eve, KMT candidates began to celebrate with fireworks to mark their certain victory in Taiwan's first free election since martial law ended. The next day, the KMT would win 80 seats, the DPP 21. But the KMT's share of the popular vote would fall from 70 to 59%. That in itself is a victory for the new party. Frustrated by the election's outcome, Hui Meng went to see Mr. Liang once again.
We came to Taiwan to fight for democracy, but I'm going back to the mainland someday. If I can't, my son or his son will.
But the problem is here in Taiwan, in our parliament. There are very few lifetime parliamentarians like you who still think clearly and have a sense of fairness. Why do they all hold on to their positions so stubbornly? Isn't there some way they can step down?
We always like to look at issues from both a historic and global perspective. Unlike the Taiwanese who only think of their local interests. I'm not complaining, but it's the Taiwanese who have control over the business world. We don't. So in this way, the situation balances out.
All the problems today have to do with the inequities and injustices of the past 40 years. What we can't deny is that ever since we came to Taiwan, we mainlanders have always had superiority over the native Taiwanese.
In a family, you have parents and children. And our nation is a family like that. It's not the young, the children who control politics. That's true in other countries too. So even if we are old, I don't think we are preventing progress in any way.
But in Taiwan today, neither the government nor business worry about air, water, land, or our human values. The only thing they care about is economic development. Even if they do recognize the importance of protecting the environment, they still put their priority on economics.
Well, there is no perfect government on earth. But the Kuomintang has certainly led Taiwan from a backward poor nation to the economic prosperity and political stability that we enjoy today.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, it's nice to see it's such a nice response from the media to come today. And I'm very happy to be back here in Japan because I think
Frank's prototype racket has been tentatively approved and announced to the Japanese press in Tokyo. Bjorn Borg is on hand to promote the racket that would now bear his name. So is the president of the Japanese company. Frank's racket pleases Bjorn Borg, but the Japanese are still not satisfied.
The transparency is difficult. Very difficult. Not so easy, ne? Yeah.
The troublesome transparency problem has not been solved. Frank and his company must still prove themselves to the Japanese. Frank gets his big order, it will be shipped out here at Kaohsiung, Taiwan's largest port. In the mid-1960s, the KMT began to encourage multinational companies, primarily from America and Japan, to locate their factories here. Attracted by Taiwan's political stability, cheap labor, and government tax breaks, foreign capital poured in. The island's economic powerhouse was born, manufacturing and exporting consumer goods to the United States and Europe. Here also is the center for Taiwan's heavy industry, especially refineries and petrochemical plants. While their products help fuel Taiwan's economy, their waste pollutes its air and water. At Kaohsiung, the rice paddies are flooded with polluted water. Farmers can no longer eat or sell their rice. Now the hidden dangers are visible, and people's anger is growing. Has started traveling across Taiwan, helping local anti-pollution movements and speaking out against the forces that threaten the environment.
对来讲，这句话是一个蛮高的觉醒。是，因为这是全地球的问题。对，他们这一次虽然是只有36户的居民，但是希望这次的活动能够得到全省甚至全世界的环保团体。
Mr. Tsai's house is surrounded by 4 bodyguards, its windows made of bulletproof glass. It's the price he pays for economic success. In Taiwan, violent crime is on the increase. Kidnapping is not uncommon.
今天准备？你一个人呢？等等，还没什么事情。没有，你回去了啊？那我回去了。等等，再见。好，再见。哎。
This child's father was a political dissident, now dead. Her mother is a DPP member. Both are now under Mr. Tsai's protection. The other cost of economic success is political turmoil, as the DPP make new demands and call for reforms.
DPP supporters battled military police this morning in front of the presidential hall, shouting slogans demanding the so-called lifetime parliamentarians step down. A handful of demonstrators were removed by the police. In light of growing protests here, the government warned that further violence by the demonstrators will not be tolerated. But DPP supporters said there would be more protests until free elections are held for all the seats in parliament.
With the transparency problem finally solved, Frank must pay subcontractors steep fees to fill the Japanese order. Without more workers, he cannot meet his deadlines.
These leaflets for recruiting employees were just reprinted. The average salary in our company already exceeds 20,000 yuan a month. Even so, recruiting new workers has not been successful. Even with newspaper ads, the responses are low. How can we expand with this unending shortage of labor?
For Frank to stay competitive, he must leave Taiwan. The only question remaining is where to find willing workers.
Instead of Malaysia, I think we should transfer our factory to mainland China. Training and communication is very important, and the language of the local employees will be a crucial factor.
The transport system is well organized within China's special economic zones. This is the first point. Also, overall instruction, training, and technology transfer can be achieved smoothly. After all, being able to communicate in the same language will make things easier. For these reasons, I think we should consider mainland China as a strong possibility for our future expansion.
Because of Cold War hostilities, direct investment in the mainland has long been forbidden. But in the new political climate, more than 2,000 entrepreneurs have built factories on the mainland by going through Hong Kong. Frank's first shipment for the Japanese company is almost ready. He'll make the delivery date, but just barely. Next time, things may not go so well. The only solution is greater capacity, and Frank must make a tough decision. As Parliament's new session approaches, Mr. Liang hopes to be elected chairman of the upper house. Although his seniority should make the vote just a formality, he's taking no chances. Rumors say his election will be challenged by the DPP, so Mr. Liang called this meeting to plot a strategy.
You should give the opposition a chance to speak out.
But if you let them debate, it will take too much time. Today's session is only to discuss procedural issues, so we should not spend time on anything else.
With pressure mounting to retire all lifetime parliamentarians, Mr. Liang is about to face the biggest challenge of his political career. Open conflict between the KMT and the DPP has become a rude fact of life in this new democracy. Student-led demonstrations break out in Taipei as the lifetime parliamentarians try to vote themselves greater powers. Support of the students is widespread, and the attempt fails. In response, President Lee promises a faster pace of reform.
在这里和国内的学生一起静坐，我呼吁你们，你们可以在国务的驻外办事室静坐，和国内的学生一起加入这个历史的行列。谢谢。
I thought the Taiwanese had lost the courage to fight after a long history of oppression and an authoritarian regime. The students' courageous acts came as a big surprise to me after all those years of government control.
Taiwan's silent past is now in the open for all to see. A past where political stability brought wealth and prosperity, but at a price. The debt is being repaid. Soon all lifetime parliamentarians will be retired, and full elections are promised, as liberalization continues. In Taiwan, politics and economics cannot be separated. As the citizens of this tiny island look to the future, can they pull together to sustain their economic miracle?
In these times of rapid change, we must learn how to use self-control. That's very important. What I see all around me is too many people who become crazy about money and speculating in the stock market. Many Taiwanese have forgotten our traditions and national sense of purpose. We are hard-working people. Personally, I'm very worried about this. As you know, there is a tendency for the sporting goods business to ship its factories overseas because the cost of labor is so high in Taiwan. Many companies have already moved to Thailand and the Philippines. We ourselves will visit mainland China to research possible sites for factories in the future. But in Taiwan, if we can only work together and try harder, I believe there is still a way to survive. We're just in a period of transition.
This pavilion here in Golden Gate Park was a gift from the citizens of Taipei to the people of San Francisco. It's like a little piece of home for the overseas Chinese who came here to America, looking to plant new roots. For them, China was closed off, and Taiwan seemed only temporary. Now, finally, things are changing. The bitter hostility is softening. Taiwan is starting to bend what it calls the policy of the three no's. No contact, no negotiations, no compromise with the communists. Now these three no's seem more like three maybes. For the first time, Taiwan authorities officially permit investment in the mainland, provided it goes through a third country such as Hong Kong. Unofficially, the Taiwanese have been doing business there for years, especially in Fujian province, where 70% of Taiwanese have their ancestral roots. Meanwhile, inside Taiwan, there have been dramatic changes in the political arena, changes that are rapidly propelling Taiwan toward full democracy. Since the end of martial law in 1987, Taiwan has allowed greater freedom of speech and greater freedom of the press. It has also allowed new political parties to form. And a real opposition, the DPP, has emerged to challenge the old monolithic KMT. The old men in the legislative bodies are retiring to be replaced by representatives elected by the people themselves. And an amended constitution has been promised by the new year. If all that happens, Taiwan could be a model of democracy for other developing countries, especially China. Here in high-tech America, the hard-earned wealth of Taiwan is showing up in new ways. A few examples. The computer giant Acer has bought out a number of its American competitors. Taiwan's biggest company, Chinese Petroleum, has taken over a major Texas oil and gas producer, while Formosa Plastics now has 13 petrochemical plants in the United States. But Taiwan's success is also due to another investment, an investment that goes back thousands of years to ancient China and the legacy of Confucius. A popular Chinese proverb says, everything is inferior to learning. Like the other mini-dragons, Taiwan has one of the highest literacy rates in the world. This highly educated population provides a major advantage as Taiwan positions itself for the next phase of industrialization into the high-tech 21st century. But there's a downside too. Highly educated workers no longer want the blue-collar jobs. so Taiwan is facing a serious labor shortage. This is a challenge all the mini dragons face, and how they solve it is the key to their continuing success. If you take the long view, and the Chinese always do, Taiwan and mainland China are bound to unite someday. And if Taiwan has done so much with so little, imagine what similar entrepreneurship could do with all the resources of China behind it. Next time, we'll take a look at a mini dragon with an exotic reputation and a hard-nosed approach to making money. Singapore.
It took over 65 years and a 3-time Iditarod champion to brave a challenge to Canada's largest peak. Join adventure on icy slopes in sub-zero weather for the Logan Challenge, next on Channel 2.
Funding by Financial Guarantee Insurance Company, helping provide financial strength, security, liquidity. FGIC AAA Bond Insurance, tomorrow's security.
To order a video copy of this series, call 1-800-345-2690. For 1-hour video cassettes, $99.95 plus $5 shipping and handling. Or mail orders to Mini Dragons, Box 2284, Burlington, Vermont. To order the Mini Dragons companion book, call 1-800-345-2690. Credit cards accepted. Or mail prepaid orders to Mini Dragons, Post Office Box 2284, Burlington, Vermont. Again, to order the Mini Dragons companion book, call 1-800-345-2690. Credit cards accepted. Or mail prepaid orders to Mini Dragons, Post Office Box 2284, Burlington, Vermont.
This is PBS.
Four small Asian countries have the fastest growing economies on Earth. We wear the clothes they make. We drive the cars and watch the TVs they manufacture. And we have a name for them. We call these countries the Mini Dragons. They're driven by the values of Confucius, values like hard work and a hunger for education. They're fueled by a young, energetic population. And they've created an economic miracle. Do they threaten our prosperity and our jobs? Do we need to master their formula for success? Now, meet a mini dragon going through tense changes. Taiwan. It has accumulated amazing wealth, but it's still struggling with democracy. South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan. Centuries of tradition and culture. Devastated in war. Now, the new economic powers of Asia. South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan. These are the mini dragons. And in Taiwan, cheap labor is a thing of the past. He simply cannot find and keep enough good workers. Yet, if he's to stay competitive, he must expand capacity. Like other manufacturers, Frank's answer may lie in mainland China, where labor's still cheap. Technically, the Kuomintang government, the KMT, opposes direct investment in the mainland. But official attitudes are changing. So Frank must weigh the business risks while struggling to keep the workers he has. Because the KMT controls the banks, personal connections, or guanqi, help fuel Taiwan's entrepreneurs, creating the financial capital they need. Frank's network of friends and alliances often leads to new business opportunities.
All of us could be involved in managing the new company.
I've got 3 questions. What do you expect from this new partnership? Who is really going to oversee the business? And how much profit am I going to make?
A former employee recently asked Frank to join him in a new business venture, to take advantage of the booming economy and start a cement business. Frank and his 2 partners are here to strike a deal.
I hope our new company generates a steady profit stream.
Well, before I start a new business, the main thing is just to be sure what the return on investment will be. A 50% return sounds great.
In a single generation, Taiwan has amassed great wealth. It is among the world's top exporting nations. On this island of entrepreneurs, there is no unemployment. The gap between rich and poor is smaller than anywhere in the world. But the island's success threatens its future, for many Taiwanese are tired and angry, tired of working so hard, and angry at a government that ruled with an iron glove for 40 years. With martial law finally lifted 4 years ago, the pace of democratic reform has quickened, but new freedom has fueled new demands. On Taiwan, the future seems filled with questions. This morning, Frank Yu's thoughts are on the future of his factory. In a place where 1 in 14 owns a business, Frank sees his labor costs rising and his labor pool shrinking. Frank makes tennis rackets for Japanese and American companies. In this family business, his wife keeps the books. So far, business is good. Here, 140 people work day and night producing tennis rackets for Prince, Yamaha, and Kawasaki. Frank has developed a unique carbon fiber process to fashion rackets of very high quality. But 45% of his direct costs are labor.
To many people, Taiwan is the other China. This island, about half the size of South Carolina, looks tiny alongside the mainland. It may be tiny in size, but it exports more goods than the entire People's Republic of China. And the average person in Taiwan earns 27 times more than the average mainlander. Taiwan is truly the capitalist challenge to the communist giant. But economic success has its own price for the people of Taiwan, as you will see.
Each Chinese New Year, people pray for the future and remember the past. On Taiwan, a small island 90 miles off the coast of mainland China, this New Year seems rich with promise. While the future looks bright, there are still signs of a darker past. 40 years of dictatorship and martial law that have only recently given way to a growing democracy. For much of this time, Taiwan was an island of 2 very separate societies, divided not by race or religion, but by birthplace. Here, native Taiwanese have lived for generations. Here, too, live former Chinese mainlanders who fled to Taiwan with Chiang Kai-shek after his defeat by the communists in 1949. Obsessed with winning back China, the mainlanders, Chiang's Kuomintang, took control of Taiwan's government, leaving commerce to the willing hands of the native Taiwanese.
You made me an offer I can't refuse.
Although cement has little to do with tennis rackets, Frank will put up the money. Personal connections, Guan Chi, is the deciding factor. They celebrate the new partnership with songs and drink, or as it's called, karaoke. Frank and his extended family live in a large family compound in Taichung, Taiwan's third largest city. When Frank was just a child, his father lost his business. He died soon after, and his family was left with nothing. Frank's mother did what she could to raise 10 children. Only Frank was able to go to college. Now the most successful member of his family, Frank